XML file. And in this tutorial, we're going to look at deploying a web application to a local Tomcat server. And in the next tutorial, we're going to go on to look at deploying your application to a free account on the internet. But let's start with deploying to Tomcat, which is the simplest kind of case. So to deploy my web application, assuming you've got your mapping set up in your web.xml, which we looked at last time, it's pretty simple. Right click your project in Eclipse and go to Export WAR file. And now a WAR file is it's a kind of jar file that basically archives your entire application in a format that can then be deployed on the server. So I'm going to just browse here for a location to deploy this WAR file to, and let's just put it in. I'll put it in my folder C tutorial servlets 2 for the moment. In fact, actually, I think my workspace is in C workspace servlets 2. So let's just put it there. It doesn't really matter, of course. This is going to be different on your machine. Just basically export it somewhere, and let's save it right there. So servlets 2. There we go. That should be okay. And if you are literally planning to deploy to one of these versions of Tomcat, you could, if you are running at least a Juno version of Eclipse or a recent version, and you get this checkbox, of course you might want to leave it ticked. But if you want to deploy to a different application server, then you'll want to untick that. But if you don't see this checkbox, don't worry about it. And I'll click Finish there. And now let's browse to that directory and make sure it really does exist. So I'll go to C workspace, and I saved it in this folder here. And there is my deployment.war that I've just created. So it's got today's date on it, which is good. And I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to browse to my Tomcat installation directory. And if you're working in some big company, let's say, then you might have to FTP this to some machine that's running Tomcat. But let's look at my local version of Tomcat here. It's installed, I think, in program files. So C program files, Apache Software Foundation, and Tomcat 7 web apps. Now, basically, Tomcat has this web apps folder, and all you've got to do is save your WAR files into that folder and restart Tomcat. So I'm just going to paste my database.war in here, and there we go. And now go back to Eclipse and right click on this and make sure that your Eclipse instance of Tomcat is shut down, because Eclipse kind of runs its own version, which is configured from this servers project folder here. And if this says it's started, then right click and stop it, because I'm going to now start the kind of main installation of Tomcat on my local machine, and this will conflict with it if it's not stopped. So now I've got my WAR file in my web apps folder of Tomcat, and this is stopped. And I'm going to go to my start menu here and look for my Monitor Tomcat application. And of course, if you're working on Linux or something, this is going to be a bit different, but I'm just going to look at Windows in this series of tutorials. And I'm just going to right click that and go to Run as Administrator. And now I'm going to start Tomcat when my wait cursor goes away. Let's click Start. So Tomcat's starting, and once Tomcat has started up, you can go to the Tomcat homepage, which will be at localhost 8080 by default. So that's localhost : 8080, 8080 being the port number, and localhost is the computer that I'm deploying it on, which in this case is it's just this machine here that I'm working on. And now, as long as Tomcat's working, you should be able to go to / and your context root, which by default is the name of your project, possibly with underscores if you gave your project a name with spaces in it. I'm going to go to deployment, and if I hit return now, so now I'm seeing the home file that I added to this project in the last tutorial, because we saw in the last tutorial that in web.xml there's a list of possible welcome files, and if you create a file with that name in your web content, like index.jsp here, that's what you'll see when you go to your context root. But we could check these other mappings, because I've also got the mappings here, hello world and login page. So if I go to those, I should see some, I think one's a servlet, hello world, and the other is a JSP. But of course they're both just outputting content just the same, and the user will never have to know which one's which. Let's go to login page as well. There we go. So that's it for this tutorial, and WAR files provide you with a very nice simple way of deploying your web applications. And one last thing to mention here, which is that if you copy in a new WAR file, you'll notice that Tomcat unpacks your WAR file to a directory like this, which will contain your web project. So if you want to deploy the same project again, make sure that you delete not only the WAR file, that is stop Tomcat, delete the WAR file, also delete this unpacked version of it before copying a new WAR file